Good morning, gentlemen. Good morning, citizens of Tampa. We have a special call agenda today, June 14th, 2021. This time we'll have invocation, and we will do a moment of silence, and then we'll go for the Pledge of Allegiance. We'll stand for Pledge of Allegiance, gentlemen. Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America, and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Madam Deputy Clerk, roll call, please.
Carlson.
Here.
Maniscalco. Here. Dingfelder. Here. Citro.
Here.
Vieira.
Here.
Miranda.
Here.
And Goods.
Here.
We have a physical quorum.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Clerk.
Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Shelby, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you. Good morning, members of the Tampa City Council. Martin Shelby, the City Council Attorney. Today is Monday, June 14th of 2021. We're here at Old City Hall for a special call meeting pursuant to City of Tampa's Council Rules of Procedure Rule 3B7. It's being held during the COVID-19 state of emergency. The purpose of this special call meeting is to discuss the meeting of the City Council Chair and the Mayor relating to issues involving the Citizen Police Review Board. There will be no opportunity for public comment today. No official action will be taken. Any official action will be required to be taken at a subsequent noticed public meeting with the public having the opportunity to speak. Now, the public today is able to view this meeting on cable TV on Spectrum Channel 640 and Frontier Channel 15, and streaming on the internet at tampa.gov/live stream. And as you heard, this meeting is conducted in person, virtually in City Council chambers with a physical quorum present. However, in response to the COVID-19 public health considerations, members of the public who don't have access to cable TV or the internet can come to the second floor of Old City Hall this morning to virtually watch the meeting through audio and video through communications media technology. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Shelby. Again, good morning, gentlemen. I call this special call meeting to try to bring some issues to a landing between the mayor's office and this council. Back on the 27th, you entrusted me with a roll call vote to meet with the mayor in reference to some things that transpired at our meeting in reference to the CRB board. And this morning, I want to tell you how that meeting went, so there's full transparency of what was said in the meeting and who was attendance in the meeting. I was attended that meeting. The meeting was at 3 o'clock. Martin Shelby accompanied me, our city council attorney. John Bennett was there, Marley Wilkes, and the mayor. The meeting started out cordially with everyone introducing themselves and a little chit-chat to kind of as an icebreaker. I started the meeting off first. I told the mayor straight out that council was a little bit upset about the press conference. We felt that at that press conference, her and the chief said we didn't do our job, and that we thought that was unfair. I told her that we received information at the 9th hour. Some council members did not receive the information that we were going to have the agenda item that came up. I told the mayor usually, this has been an ongoing thing that we're getting things in the 9th hour. And that can't happen, that we get things and the council gets in an uproar because we're getting late information or councilmen aren't able to chime back in to find out what's going on. I told the mayor that basically that in February we thought that we had brokered a deal of a 7-4 with a 5-2 vote. I told the mayor that during that period we thought it was coming back and it was going to be a done deal. We hadn't heard anything. Because normally if we make a deal or decision and staff or the administration doesn't like it, they'll run down or they'll get on the camera and say and ask us to hold. That didn't happen. I told the mayor that did not happen that day, so this council thought that we were down a path. And then all of a sudden, this council had been waiting, and then at the 9th hour, we got that information. And then apparently, we had a train wreck on that day. I told her that, and I apologize for some of the comments that some of our council members made. But I also said I thought it was kind of unfair that on both parts. So I want to make sure that we work together and not be combative against one another. I did tell the mayor that council felt that the 7-4 would give every council member a vote of a person, and she had 4. And again, just to make sure that it's, I kept saying it's not a power thing. People keep saying it's a power thing. And to me, it's not a power issue. But I did tell the mayor I think this council would be willing to maybe compromise, maybe a 6-5. I don't know. I couldn't speak for the council, but I'm just saying it could be thoughts that could transpire and it could happen. I pretty much finished up, with what I thought that could try to get with the administration and work out some issues. I did tell the mayor I thought the ordinance was a good ordinance. We had a lot of good things in there. A lot of good things in there. A few of those things we said we kicked down the road. We didn't entertain at this particular moment in time because we wanted to get it moving. Then I let the mayor speak, and the mayor told me that, but before I spoke, I did say that I didn't agree with some of the city attorney's interpretation, but she's the city attorney, Ms. Grimes, and she's a wonderful person, and that's her job to interpret. And I did tell the mayor that I believe that her job is to set policies and rules for the police department. But when it comes to legislative matters, this body is entrusted in legislative matters. And then there was a disagreement with that. But that was fine. I mean, we can settle those things out later on down the road about who does what, how, when, and where. So I let the mayor speak, and the mayor said that she felt that she did have the power and authority because the charter tells her about the management of the police department. And I agreed about the policy and so forth. We did not get on any charter issues. I did not want to go there. The issue I wanted to get on was basically dealing with how we proceed with those numbers. Because I said we were going to deal with those things down the road, way down the road or whenever. The mayor said she was strongly felt that she had done everything she could do as far as giving everything she thought that she could give at this particular time. She felt that, and I told her, I said, I can say you've done a great job. And then Mr. Bennett chimed in and said, we're debunking the Buckhorn situation, which I thought was noble to say that someone you were giving more. And I thought the ordinance did have more. The mayor thought that a 5-5 split it would be an equal balance. I told her I thought the 1 was confusing because no one really knew what the 1 meant. Who was getting that 1? How would that 1 go? That's why I kept saying, well, a straight 6-5. So apparently my interpretation of the 1 would be either council would make the appointment and then make the recommendation. The mayor would say okay, or vice versa. But then the meeting concluded, and I said, well, Mayor, I thank you for your time. I can't make any decisions for this council. I will not make any deals at this particular point. The only thing I would tell you that as a chairman that we want to work together. I don't want any lawsuits because we have a housing crisis right now, and I'm concerned about housing right now. And all the monies that we have, we need to be focused on spending on housing. I made it clear I didn't want to get into a fight about an issue going to court or anything in reference to this body, and I hope that we would try to bring this in for a landing with both parties. Then the meeting adjourned cordially. We embraced, and I left. And then I was thinking about all week how does it play out, and I got a call on Friday. Mr. Citro, you made a point at the last meeting, sir. You said no one had talked to the CRB. Well, hell, I guess you were right, because the CRB called the chairman of the Tampa City Council. I received calls from those folks saying that they liked the ordinance. No one talked to them. There could have been some other things that they would have liked to talk about. And I sit there and I listen to those folks. And I mean, these are some credible people that are on this board, some very smart people who are known in the community and who do a lot of good work, and felt that they should have been in on the conversation a little bit. And I sit back and I ponder it all day Friday. I said, they're right. And then I called Miss Debbie. Again, I'm transparent. I called Miss Debbie. I said, get me the chairman of the CRB. I want to talk to the chairman. And he gave me his thoughts. He wished that we had talked and said he liked the ordinance. But one thing that came away from all of them, and Mr. Shelby brought it up in the meeting as well, is that the one is the kicker, keeps coming up, the organizational piece to that. And they all said the same thing Mr. Shelby brought up was, well, what if there's another organization? Why that organization? Why not this organization? Or how do you fix so everyone gets an opportunity? Well, I couldn't answer that. I had no answer because we had never discussed that. So I think that one has been the issue. Again, I want to make sure that the administration knows that we want to work with them, and I'm sure they want to work with us. We're here for the citizens. And the union kept coming up in the meeting sometimes, and I kept saying that as far as a person who's been a part of the union, who understands the union, I'm in a difficult position because I've been a police officer, I understand, but I was elected by the people to do a job. So I will probably won't make anybody happy. And that's unfortunate. I'm not going to make anybody happy. But decisions have to be made. I'm willing to have my big boy shorts up and make whatever decision I have to make for the good of this community and good for the police officers, because I understand both sides of it. But I want to be clear, gentlemen, that at some point we have to bring this in for a landing. You know, to me, it's not a win, lose, or draw. I don't care about, somebody saying, well, the mayor office won, you guys. I don't care about that. I care about the citizens, and we can always add to the game. If something's not right, I think you can always do better. 2015, they got some stuff in and to get it moving. Now, here we are in 2021 to make it better. It may be 2023, it becomes better 22. We have our annual report each year. I've never seen one until I just got one last week. So my purpose today is to hear what everyone has to say, kind of see how we can go so the administration know where we need to go and still try to work this thing out, because on the 17th, I don't want to come on the 17th and we're here taking up a whole agenda item all day. We're not going to do that. We need to make some decisions, A, B, C, and D, put them on the table, and on the 17th, we come away with what we're going to come away with. But we have to make decisions, and we cannot keep holding the police department at bay. The police department is a paramilitary organization. They take orders. So no matter what the mayor says, when it comes down, they're going to follow rules, and then they get over it, and they go to work. That's how it works over there. I was there. I didn't like a lot of rules. I got over it. I didn't like it, but I got over it, did my job, and that was it. That's what police officers do. That's what happens. Same thing with some of our social justice groups. Some people may be upset, be mad, but they'll be mad for the moment. And then we move on and we do what we need to do in time. I'll start out with Mr. Maniscalco.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. I brought up a lot of comments at one of the last meetings, just giving my historical point of view on this whole discussion. I was elected in 2015, and a few months later, this discussion began, and here we are 6 years later with the same discussion. Different mayors, different administration. Things have changed. Certain things have happened since then. I myself, and I've said it before, I try to be a peacemaker. I try to extend the olive branch, even to the people that may hate me, may want to hurt me. I try to, I believe in forgiveness. I believe in moving on. I don't like being at a stalemate with anybody. I don't like being at odds with anybody. And unfortunately, it seems that, as was presented a couple weeks ago, and you've said it already, we voted on something in February, and it was quiet until basically the day before the day of, and the discussion opened up again, and here we are. And, whether we like it or not, Thursday is going to be a long meeting because we're going to have a lot of public comment. We saw a lot of public comment, and rightfully so, last summer. I don't know what's going to happen this Thursday. My thing is, the public perception is the mayor is a former chief of police, who appoints the chief of police. So there are people that will say or can assume that well, the police run the city. No, we're elected officials. The city council has one body, the administration has another body. We respond to the people. We try to pass a budget and whatnot. But when it comes to this board, we need a balance. And I've said, and we voted on, why don't we choose 7 members? 7 members, 1 for each city council member, and then the mayor has the remaining amount, and then the NAACP, however that would work. I don't see an issue with it, but some people don't agree with it, and I understand it. I think that if we could move forward with city council appointing the 7 people, and then the mayor having the rest, but taking the discussion of subpoena power and outside counsel off the table and just close it out. If it's about a balance there of who appoints what, and then end the discussion there, next year we can revisit it, or in the future we can revisit it. You've already made mention to, something was approved and passed and the board was created in 2015. Now we're making it better. The ordinance that's been provided to us, is better, is an improvement. And in the future, we can improve it even further. We can't do everything all at once because we see how things work. And then, we fix what we have to fix and move forward. It's a perpetual thing. It's as they say, the Constitution is a living, breathing document. We can revisit this in the future if we see more issues. I don't know where council stands. I know, we've had our votes, that 5-2 vote of we appoint 7 and then the administration appoints 4. Perhaps we can move forward with that and then take off the discussion in the future, the workshop, whatever, regarding subpoena power and outside attorney. I've thought about the outside counsel. There is someone that is hired, I believe it's Mr. Brody, to look at this. He's not from here. He doesn't have a dog in the fight. I think he can be fair, impartial, and neutral. We have that, which is separate from our city council attorney or our city attorney. So that's balanced. The subpoena power people have issue with. You're not subpoenaing police officers, but you're subpoenaing private individuals. What about those private individuals that may not want to appear and testify? How do they get out of a subpoena? I don't know. I don't know. I mean, can we reach an agreement where we just agree on the appointments and close out everything out and move forward? I think we could do that. If not, we figure out a way. Those are just my thoughts. And I'm happy to listen to what everybody else has to say. Thank you.
And Mr. Chairman?
I just got the message, sir. I know you have to leave at 10 o'clock, so I was going to go to you next. Mr. Vieira, you're recognized.
I appreciate it, Mr. Chairman.
Can we get some volume from Mr. Vieira, please, IT?
Oh,
That sounds
there
better.
he is. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman, for people, the many watching this at home. I'm in D.C. right now on family vacation, so that's why I'm appearing here with in what appears to be a hotel room, because I am in a hotel room. Mr. Chairman, I first wanted to thank you for your leadership and volunteering. A lot of times I think one of the great, essences of leadership is where you have nothing to gain but a lot to lose. A lot of people go after things where they have something to gain. I think that for you, Mr. Chairman, what you're looking to gain is just to do the right thing. And I really appreciate that. And I think we all appreciate that. In politics, sticking your neck out, either, by asserting yourself like you did, I'm an admirer of that. So I just wanted to say I appreciate it, because that really, really shows leadership. And I think that today, I don't want to speak for everybody, but I heard Councilman Maniscalco's words. And by the way, Guido, if anybody wants to hurt you, please let us know. But I'm joking what you said in the beginning. But I think that when it comes to dialogue and talking on this, I think we all want to have your back in that regard. So I think we all just really, really appreciate it and whatnot. Hearing from the CRB is something that's very important. I'm glad that, folks are reaching out. I had reached out to some of their members, and that's something that's bothered me throughout this, which is that we have not reached out to the CRB. I've spoken to, I think, 4 of their members throughout the duration of this process. But there's kind of been a cloud, if you will, over some of the CRB members because of how the 2015 board occurred. And I think one of the things that we want to do is we don't want to make that created cloud worse, but we can make it better by passing an ordinance that does the job that I think we all want to have done. I think it's very, very important and whatnot. when I look at today, what divides the vote that happened from city council and the mayor, there's a lot of misunderstandings going on there. There's one thing that really divides us, and that's one vote. One vote. Whether you call it 5-5-1, whether you call it 6-5, whatever, one vote. 7-4 versus 6-5, 7-4 versus 5-5-1. I've talked about for probably 7 or 8 months having a 5-5 split with one, whether it's whatever organization or organizations appointed, potentially confirmed by council, whatever it may very well be, having that go. That's very little that divides this from being a universal signing ceremony. And I think we have to keep our eye on that 110%, in my opinion. There's a lot of legal issues that have been brought up in that regard, that if council goes forward, as I understand the position of the administration, if council goes forward with the 7-4, and correct me if I'm wrong, this ordinance then won't be implemented. And then there's going to be a legal fight. And so my question is, over one vote, do we want to have that fight with the associated costs and time, et cetera, when we have an ordinance that, in my opinion, and I think in most people's opinion, is very, very good, in my opinion, and whatnot. You know, last time I talked about de-escalating things. Happens to all of us. It's happened to me, it happens to everybody, but where, you know, passions arise, et cetera. But I think that if we focus on the fact that we're only talking about one appointment, I think that's very, very instructive. There's other issues out there, subpoena power, and with the attorney, I want to make sure we have the terminology. Every attorney is independent. Every attorney has to be, by virtue of their ethical constraints, independent. The issue is whether or not we're going to have an attorney who's outside or not. I think that's certainly something that should be looked at. But those are issues that are not before us today. Frankly, especially on the subpoena issue, I'd love just to poll city council, because, you know, we keep on hearing about subpoena power. Where does city council stand on that issue? Just something to think about, I think, in my opinion. I think we're all on board with 99% of this ordinance. We got to talk about that 1%. And we got to remember why we're doing this. You know, why we did things over the last year, like spending millions of dollars on body cameras, something that we should have done, something I've been on city council for 4 years, something that I should have been pushing for years ago, like I said, when we passed this about a year ago. Things like body cameras, the implicit bias training that we're having now for all of our city of Tampa employees, something that was brought up in mid-2018. I remember bringing that up. And I believe Councilman Maniscalco seconded me, if I recall, kind of went nowhere until the last year. We have to thank our friend Councilman Dingfelder for picking up an important reform, which is having mental health counselors go with police officers on calls that deal with emotional or psychiatric issues, taking a look at use of force, the duty to intervene, different things like that I think are really, really good. You know, these board changes, there's so many good board changes that we don't want to, you know, lose perspective of that. So again, we're very, very close, in my opinion. And the question we have to ask ourselves is, do we want to go through this legal battle with all the associated turmoil over one vote? That's certainly something that we have to look at. But Mr. Chairman, I just again wanted to thank you for putting this together, as well as for your leadership and whatnot. I look forward to, you know, going forward with this ordinance. Nobody wants to be against this ordinance, but we want something that will be implemented and that's not going to lead us on a train that I don't think any of us, to a destination where I don't think any of us want to go. So that's it for now. Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank everybody. I'll be docking off at about 10 a.m. because I want to go with my son to the Lincoln Monument or something this morning. But thank you again, everybody. I appreciate it.
Thank you, Mr. Mr. Shelby brought something to my attention. You know, I have so many thoughts in my head this morning, folks, and I forgot to mention it City Attorney Gina Grimes was also in attendance at the meeting, just for the record. Ms. Grimes was at the meeting. Mr. Carlson, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, sir, and I want to echo the comments of my colleagues. Thank you for moving that forward. It showed great leadership and wisdom in trying to make sure the community and the city council and the city and the mayor's office all work together and moving forward. Also want to thank Chief of Staff Bennett for his ongoing help the last couple of years, but in particular the last couple of weeks. The meeting that you talked about was very difficult. I was not briefed in advance on the options that were going to be presented. I found out about them that day, and I was surprised by the comments from the city attorney in particular, and also from the police chief, and then also from the press conference. And you know, the mayor is a political person, so she can say what she wants, but the police chief said things in this room and on TV cameras that night that were inflammatory, and I think some of them were borderline not true, if not true. One of them is this issue about subpoena power. I went back and watched the meeting from last time, and as far as I could tell, the only time subpoena power came up was when Mr. Dingfelder said that the city attorney had told us we couldn't do anything unless we had a charter amendment. We didn't make any motion on it, we didn't put it on the agenda, but somehow that became the key message in the TV news coverage that night, which I think is highly inflammatory. It was not called for, and I think that that's not the kind of way we should communicate with the public. We should be honest and direct with the public about what happened. The other thing the police chief said here and on TV is that we didn't do our job, that we kept kicking this down the road, and it's not true. We passed an ordinance that day. It's completely false to stand up on TV and say that we didn't do anything when we had just passed something. And so I think that we have no power apparently by the city attorney over the police chief, but I would call on him to tell the truth if he's going to get before cameras and also in front of this body. We think about why are we here in the first place? I was an activist 6 years ago, and the community was very upset about what was a racist policy that oppressed the black community. In part, it was biking while black, but there were many other policies, and it wasn't something created by the police. This is not something that where people don't like the police. The problem is that we had a mayor who pushed racist policies, and not this mayor, the last mayor, and it is a fact. The U.S. Justice Department came in and condemned the city of Tampa for civil rights violations, and somehow we need to make sure that that does not happen again. And part of the fight was strengthening this CRB. Part of it was making sure that in the future that the public has more of a choice in it. As I said last time, if we have a 7-4 vote, it doesn't mean that we're going to pick 7 anti-police people. In fact, if I picked an anti-police person, I would get thrown out of office. So I think that 7, if we had 7, we fully represent the different districts of the community. We would represent a cross-section of the community. The reason why I did speak to a couple of the CRB members, and if somebody's going to get on TV and say that we didn't speak to the CRB members, I wish they would ask us first. They didn't ask us whether we'd met with them or not. But the reason, as Mr. Vieira said, the reason why people haven't met with the CRB members is unfortunate for them, is because there's a cloud because of the way this was designed the last time. They were seen as being represented, many of them were seen as being representatives of the last mayor, who's the one who put these bad policies in place in the first place, and we're spending our time trying to fix this. And to the CRB members I didn't speak to, I apologize. I should have spoken to more of them and gotten their point of view, and I'm glad that Mr. Goods, Chair Goods did that. I appreciate the mayor working with us on this for a year. It has been to and fro. I've also spoken to the PBA multiple times, and between February and May, there were changes made that benefited Tampa for Justice, ACLU, but also the PBA. And so we are trying to make sure that we have a fair process, and the reason why it's taken so long is because we've been hearing from all voices, which didn't really happen under the last administration. We need to make sure that this is a democracy and that we listen to what people think, and we move forward with something that makes sense. I tell people that on the day that the mayor announced her version of this about a year ago, I already had a meeting set up with the city attorney's office with some activists from the community, and the mayor allowed that meeting to continue, and we've edited it 3 or 4 times since then. So I appreciate her. I appreciate Chief Bennett in helping us move this forward. Some key technical things. I think it's important that the vote is representative of the community. I prefer a 7-4 vote. I understand that we're talking about one vote, but it is important for to be representative of the community. As I said to Darla from the PBA, what happens if you get an anti-police mayor? Do you want it to be equal if you get an anti-police mayor? Nobody thinks that would happen in the future, but we're not designing it for this administration. We're designing it for the future. But the two things that I really want in this, in trying to represent the community, number one, there were some changes made from February to May. And so if we end up changing the 7-4 vote, we need to keep the changes that were in May. And could I just ask Chief Bennett, well, I want to ask you two questions. One is, if we ended up changing the vote, can we use the May version that has the changes that happened between February and May? And the second thing is that, as I understand this, this version, other people use the name of the last mayor, but the public, many people in the public see the last version as being very biased. It had whereas clauses that were bad, that infringed on the charter. They saw it as being designed, the mayor order was seen as being spiteful against city council. But the way I understand this is that if we pass an ordinance on Thursday, if the mayor's okay with it, then she will not only accept the ordinance and work with it, but she will also rip and replace the executive order. So there'll be a new executive order and a new ordinance that will supersede the last executive order and the last ordinance, and we're working from the May version. Are those 2 points correct?
So, good morning, Council. John Bennett, Chief of Staff, and good morning, public. To answer your question specific, but Chairman, I'd also like to fill in some other comments at some point today. Thank you. First of all, it is the administration's vision to hold the May version except for the portion of the balance of the board. You know, the administration is looking for the same thing, a progressive, unbiased, balanced board to serve the community in the Citizens Review Board for the police department and the services they provide. So yes, to be specific, it would be the May version except for the way the board is structured.
And this ordinance and the mayor, so we pass this ordinance, that ordinance would supersede the old ordinance, and then the mayor would pass a new executive order that would supersede the last executive order. Is that, am I correct?
That is correct. One of the goals, as I understood it, at least from a few councilmen, was to have a new ordinance supported by a new executive order and start anew. And if that was one of the big pegs, the other one was to make sure, beyond the progressiveness, the unbiased, and the balanced ordinance, was to have a balanced board.
Yeah, and I think mentioned in talking to the PBA over this time, there are many safeguards in this for the police, so it's not anti-police. It also has more safeguards for the community. As I speak to the community that's interested in changing it, they would much rather have the May version with one less vote than have the February version with one more vote. And the most important thing, I think, for most people is to make sure we do away with the bad versions in the past and that we supersede them. So thank you all.
Mr. Citro, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair, I'd like to thank you for taking leadership in this. This is not a good look for the city. It's not a good look for the mayor's office, not a good look for us. In my opinion, it's like two parents fighting and leaving the children with no supervision. Not calling our citizens children, and not calling the city of Tampa mayor's office or city council parents. However, I think you know what I'm talking about.
Well taken, sir. Well taken.
I also thank you for listening to me when I made the statement, has this council talked to the CRB board? For this board to grow and become organic and change, this board needs to come to city council and the mayor's office and tell us what they like, what they don't like, what they need, what they want. Now, I have spoken to a number of board members. I've also gone to sensitivity training with the ACLU and Miss Lori Friedel. I've heard a lot of citizens talking. on both sides of this issue. I'll make it short and sweet. I thank the mayor's office. I thank Chief Bennett. I thank everybody involved, especially you, Mr. Chair, in this. I would like to see the people that we select, the people that we, City Council, put our trust in, like we do with so many other boards. We should have 6 members on that board, with one more, including the activists, whether it be NAACP, whether it be Hispanic Board, whether it be some other outside activist group, which would make a total of 7. I would also like to revert back to the May ordinance, and I would also like the workshop on the subpoena powers taken off the docket that day. Again, if we want this board to grow, mature, prosper, they can come to us at the annual reports that we had asked them to give us and tell us what they want, what they need, what they like, what they don't like. Rip and replace 651 with us, City Council getting that 1 from the activists and going back to the May ordinance. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Citro. Ms. Dingfellow, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I think at this point, we can't say enough about how much we appreciate your leadership on this. Just to jump in like that truly tells us and the community the kind of person that you are. And we appreciate it greatly. And I hope the community does as well, no matter how this comes out. Substantively, procedurally, it was very brave of you to jump into the fray like that. Mr. Bennett and Mr. Shelby, I had questions to both of you. Mr. Shelby, I'll start with you, hopefully on the easier one. If we left it at this 7-4 the way we did, where we were back in May with the 5-2 vote, we would be in a procedural position on this coming Thursday to just proceed with the second reading and be done with it. I think the other question you and I have talked about a little bit is if there was a slight tweak and we went to some other combination of 551, 65, something like that. Is it possible that we could continue with second reading this coming Thursday? Because I think everybody involved, from the mayor to council to the community, would like to see this done on Thursday. So hopefully your answer is in the affirmative, but you tell me.
Generally, what I believe you're asking is, irrespective of whether you go to second reading on the ordinance as it is, or you come to an agreement to come to a consensus to substitute the Exhibit A relative to just the appointments and the apportionment of the appointments, can you still go forward to second reading?
Correct.
And the answer to that question, in my opinion, is yes. There may be a few little caveats in there, but generally speaking, fortunately, and I'm very grateful, I did have the opportunity to speak to Ms. Grimes and to Ms. Zellman and to Mr. Massey regarding this, and I understand that she is online. If she wishes to address that to council, I'm certainly able to answer that question, but I prefer you hear it from her, she being the city attorney. And I certainly would concur with her opinion, and if there's anything that I need to add, I certainly would. But I believe that City Council, if that is your decision, to move forward on second reading with those minor parameters, that doesn't include a change to the title or a change to the general purpose of what that ordinance is. For instance, even with regard to the appointments, it doesn't change the purpose of that board. It doesn't change that board's duties. So my opinion is that you could proceed to second reading and adoption and be able to present that to the mayor on Thursday if that's council's pleasure. If there are changes that the administration agrees to and the mayor would agree to Exhibit A.
Ms. Grimes?
And
Let's see if Ms. Grimes is there. City Attorney Grimes, is she there, Julie? There she is. Just let her go ahead and give a comment to Mr. Shelby, that way you have a full.
You heard my
story.
question, Gina?
Yes, good morning, everyone. Mr. Shelby and I had a chance to discuss this issue on Friday, and our office did conduct research on the question of making changes between first and second reading. And we believe that we can, if you decide to make the change from the 7-4 to the 5-5-1, that it is legally defensible. But like anything, it's not ironclad. As you all know, you make changes between first and second reading often. And whenever you do that, there's always a risk that someone may challenge that variation in the process. So it's, in this case, given our opinion that it is a legally defensible change, it's up to council to decide whether you want to take that risk, given the benefit of proceeding with second reading on Thursday.
Thank you, Ms. Grunt. Mr. Bennett? I know
Yes, sir.
we all like to have all the information in front of us before we opine on any particular issue. You alluded to some additional information you wanted to share with us.
I did,
If that's
Chairman, is
okay
that
with
fair?
You recognize, sir.
Okay. I'd like to back up for just a quick second before I get into some of the actually very small substantive points. You know, Chairman, I want to, too, thank you for your leadership. I think we've tried, as an administration, especially focusing on my office and my responsibilities, worked very collaboratively with council over the last 2 years, and we look forward to continuing to do that. But you made a comment, you said, I may not make anybody happy. And I've got to tell you that since 2003, when we changed our mission statement in the police department, and you were part of that journey, according to my formula, every time you save a victim in 1 year, you have to resave that victim to get another reduction the next year. It's an additive formula. And I want to tell you at the close, and I looked at this over the weekend to refresh my data from when I retired in 2015, from the accurate data that's reported on our crime reduction, that amounts to 357,529 people that are going to be happy, because that's exactly what this police department does. What's very interesting is that every major city, over 250,000 in the region, has 2 crime victims for every 1 in Tampa. So it's almost double the rate of what we have. And that is because your leadership, supporting their resources, their outputs, their inputs, and their outcomes, as well as the community. We have 400,000 people that interact with this police department in some form or respect. There's a call made, there's 69 calls every hour in this city that the police are working on to try and keep that crime rate as it is. And I think we're all very proud of that as a city. Now to the substantive part, and thank you, Councilman Dingfelder, for that opportunity. As you know, as this progressed since approximately a year ago, and those iterations include public engagement, scholar practitioner engagement, as well as
Mr. Chair, could I just ask, there's a terrible feedback squealing sound. I don't know if you all hear it, but is it possible we could turn off all the mics other than that one? Do you all hear that sound? It's really lit.
my ear's been ringing for 5 years. It might be the same thing.
I can tell it's been ringing.
Yeah, I can tell too. But anyway, again, thank you for the opportunity. I just want to go back and say that through this journey, and we won't rehash it because that's not what we're here to narrow in, there was 2 things, and I think I mentioned them already in Councilman Carlson's questions, is that we wanted progress, very important. We wanted unbiased, and we wanted a balanced board. And that required 2 things. One, to rip and replace the former ordinance. I'll tell you, I got partially emotional the other day at that meeting with the mayor when Mr. Shelby said, I really envision all of us standing around the table at a signing ceremony after Thursday. And that's amazing to me. That's an amazing show of what Mr. Citro said a few minutes ago about the city looking at their leadership, the 8 elected officials in this city and the over 4,000 employees serving them in a manner that just is, to me, undescribable success. And we want to continue that momentum in the community with all the accountability and all the things that we progressed with. Secondly, beyond the balanced and unbiased board, there was 2 things. One was to rip and replace the old ordinance and replace it with a new one, which allows a lot of opportunity. That was a request from council to have a new ordinance, and the mayor acknowledged that. On top of that, rip and replace ordinance, the second thing was, the mayor went into this with a 7-4, 7 on the administration and 4 on council. And the big thing was to move that needle to the center and have a balanced and, of course, unbiased board. And so the 551, using the May platform and all the substantive changes that have worked its way to May, and Ms. Grimes is on as well, makes a great compromise for the journey we've been on, the stakeholders we've been on, including the union, the police department, the administration. And what it does is it allows council to have 5, the administration to have 5, and then whether council makes a recommendation on the middle person and the mayor confirms it, or it flips the other way around, the mayor makes a recommendation and council confirms it, we'd have that beautiful balance of 5-5-1 in a balanced, unbiased, and progressive CRB. And the beauty of that going forward is there's always room to progress. We've talked about the journey that the CRB is on, the fact that they're going to bring annual reports, the fact that we're going to have a transparent and engaging progress with the police department. I mean, when you unpack this, and I have to credit the city attorney's office for this, they really did a really solid job canvassing the state and beyond for a model policy configuration that was efficient, effective, and equitable to go forward. So there's always room to grow. So I think the only two things are the content of the May ordinance with an adjustment to the 551. And I'm glad to hear from Mr. Shelby's office and Ms. Grimes' office that they agree that those minor modifications can be made and we can continue a vote on Thursday. I'll hold there.
Mr. Chairman, just a couple of things. When we talk about a balanced and unbiased board, it almost makes me chuckle a little bit, because if you look at, okay, I can test everybody here, including the mayor and everybody across the street in the administration. It's like, tell us about the variance review board, okay? Who sits on the variance review board? Who are the mayor's picks? Who are council's picks? All right, nobody would know, okay? Maybe the clerk knows, but other than that, nobody would know, because we're part of that. We pick some of those board members. The mayor picks some of those board members. They're all good people, regular people from the community. Okay, this city council, these 7 members of the city council, we are not a radical body. All right, there is nothing to be afraid of. That if we had, God forbid, if we each had one member to pick in a 7-4 situation, that all of a sudden we're going to change from the relatively moderate and almost conservative body that we are to some radical group that's putting flamethrowers on the CRB. That is always sort of, I think that's been a sad statement to me, that there's people out there that might be afraid of that. And I think, Mr. Carlson, I think you made that point very well about a month ago. Probably even more important to me is whatever we do as a city council, okay? The substantive part of it, 741, 551, those issues come and go, and the next city council 3 years from now could change it. The next mayor, X number of years from now, working with city council, could propose a change. They could abolish they could do all sorts of things. But the real issue that concerns me greatly is structural, okay? The structure and integrity in the relationship between the different bodies in City Hall. And I mean that, and Mr. Chairman, you brought it up, again, to reinforce the fact that the charter says that we are the legislative body. And I think this is a very healthy process, because it does remind me of Washington, D.C., John Bennett. It reminds me of Washington, D.C., where the president sends his people down to the Capitol and says, We don't like this part of the legislation. We suggest otherwise. And it's a tug and pull and tug and pull. But at the end of the day, you know, other than the vice president and a tie, at the end of the day, the legislative decision is made by that legislative body in Congress, and I don't believe that we should be any different than that. So the notion that there might be some sort of, you know, threat out there that the mayor might not uphold the law, okay, I don't know. I find that very difficult to comprehend and even believe. Because this is a woman who has spent her entire life upholding the law. This is her entire career has been taking the ordinances, taking the laws of the land, whether or not they're federal, state, or local, and upholding them. But let me back up a little bit and talk to the substance of this. When that May meeting was very unfortunate in 10 different ways, and none of us felt good after it. And to the extent that I might have contributed to the controversy, I apologize to anybody I might have insulted. But I'm not going to go backwards. When I left that meeting the next day, and I'll break our confidence here, but because I started it, but the next day I called John Bennett and I said, John, I think we should work towards some sort of compromise on all of the issues. And Mr. Maniscalco, you brought it up, and somebody else, I think Mr. Citro, you might have brought it up a minute ago. But I said the same thing the day after that May meeting. I said, you know what? I said, council made a decision. We made a very strong decision to support Mr. Carlson's motion on 5-2 with the 7-4 membership. I said, we made that decision very strong. We passed it on first reading. That was this legislative body's decision. I said, however, I think the area that we could give and take a little bit is on the other sort of, you know, the other person in the room, the other thing in the room, which was this issue of subpoena power and independent counsel. Because we had pushed that off until next February. And as Mr. Maniscalco pointed out, I think there is an opportunity to horse trade on that issue. Because that issue is not set in stone. That issue is not part of an ordinance that's halfway through, you know, right now. You know, and I was amenable 3 weeks ago, John, when you and I spoke about it, and I'm still amenable today to putting that discussion off. If somebody makes a motion to take that February workshop off the table and put it off for a couple of years until the next council comes along, and the next council might want to bring it up, or maybe they won't. Okay, so be it. So I made that offer then before Mr. Chairman, before you jumped in and said you want to take the leadership on it. I made that offer then as a proposal, and I still think that that's the appropriate compromise today. And I think that's an important compromise, because when I listened to that press conference out there, okay, they weren't talking about 741 and 551. What they were talking about, and including and especially PBA, is they were talking about subpoena power and independent counsel. And they felt very passionately, they all seemed to feel very passionately, including the police chief, about those other issues. So if it's a matter of compromise, then I think that that's another area that could be compromised. Not could be compromised, but could be an area of compromise that we could all work on together. I think that's all I've got today. I promised my wife I wouldn't talk at all, so I guess she'll be mad at me.
Well, she can blame me because I wanted everybody to talk today, so she can blame me on that one. Mr. Randall, you're recognized, sir.
Thank you very much, Chairman. I appreciate all your efforts to come to some type of conclusion on this matter. You know, when you go back and look, geez, 2019 seems like it was yesterday. But we're already past the halfway mark of the fabulous 8. 7 here and 1 next door. 8 officials who got elected to serve the public. And I'm going to emphasize to serve the public. And when you go back, and I'm not speaking to any one issue, I don't challenge people. Once I leave these 2 doors that I walk out, I forget how everybody voted. It's up to individuals that got elected to vote the way they should, and we should never all vote 7, because then they only need 1 person up here, not 7. when you look at, and I know subpoena power is not on the table, but that's like usurping the power of the state attorney and the grand jury. And no one should have that power other than the state attorney and the grand jury. When you look at the charter, what this brought up, I think, was Section D, the first sentence in that section, the last 7 words to be exact. Then you go back and understand how things are done. No department head is appointed by one person. They're recommended by one person, and they're voted on by 7 other persons. That's us. Past council, this council, and future councils. So what I'm saying is, we have something to do when they appoint all department heads, including the police chief and including the city attorney. So my recommendation would be something different that has never been discussed. We're already in mid-2021. To speak of another month, you'd be halfway. Then you have 2022. And in 2022, towards the end of 22, guess what happens? Whoever's seeking office is going to get geared up for an election. What a wonderful time to put something like this on the ballot. Let the public decide. That's called democracy by large numbers, not by 8. Not by 7-4, not by 5-5-1, not by 6-3-1, 6-3-2, whatever. It's called democracy. It settles the situation once and forever. I don't like to sit here and understand, tell myself, gee, I wonder what's going to happen in 2025. Let it be clear, cut, dry what's going to happen, because the public has voted on it. And you don't hear me speaking much about that because the public elected us. But when there's some type of give and take, and 2 bodies, wherever the bodies may be, and you know what? There's nothing wrong with having a difference of opinion among 8 individuals. That's also called democracy. In some places in the world, in most places of the world, not some, there is no vote between 8 people. One individual, be he or she, votes, and that's the way it is. And they go out and they make it happen that way. No government gets elected 85% to 15% or 99% to 1, and that happens in the majority of the world. Here we have a closed ballot. Everybody wants to say, what the hell's going on? Because we have democracy. And you win the popular vote and you lose the electoral vote. That's democracy. That's not right or wrong. That's the way it was made hundreds of years ago. And you know what? After all the tugging, all the dragging, all the misinformation by both sides, allegedly, not this side, I'm talking about the world, somehow democracy works in this country. Name me another country that has the same form of government. Just think about it. Think about it for a long time, because you're going to be thinking for a real long time. There aren't any in my book. None is structured like this that has survived this long. None. So make this an election of the people to vote on, because guess what? Could be that the same individuals here and next door will be seeking office. All of us or some of us. But it would be a vocal point to speak on where I guarantee you you're going to have the largest turnout possibly in the history of the city. You see, when I first started on this thing, there was more people voting per percentage than there is now. You don't believe me? Check the record. What happens is you go out now to gather money to go TV ads, to go direct mail, because we have identified who votes. So you go to the new technology. See, I'm from the old school. What happened to spaghetti dinners? Some of you remember that, some of you don't. What happened to the yellow rice and chicken dinners? What happened to the ice factory speeches when we go out and speak at the ice factories and hundreds of people show up? And I've said it before, you have a fish fry for people to come in, the fish don't even show up. Because now we've gotten lazy. We want to stay home. We got TV, you got all the amenities, you have air conditioning. When I started, few people had air conditioning. There was no direct mail. to speak of. And let me talk about absentee ballots. In order to get an absentee ballot to vote, you had to be outside the country or in a hospital. And it worked for a while. Now, the same government wants to tell the world that we live in a democracy. You can't have an absentee ballot mailed to you and you mail it back. What? You can't have a drop box to put it in. When they first started out mailing out the ballots to your house, they paid the mail going in and you had to pay the 89 cents going out. Nobody said anything about that. Now they pay the mail coming in. They give you an envelope with return mail going back out. To get what? More people enthused in democracy. Democracy is like a balloon filled with water. You grab it on one side, it moves to the other. Grab the other side, it moves. And maybe that's the beauty of it. Because if you're not satisfied with a balloon, you pop it. And this balloon, I hope, never pops. Because if it does, democracy is gone from the world. Look what happened in Israel just the other day. Look what happened in all the countries the other day. And I'm not singling out Israel. But what I'm saying is that they had this system about anger or not anger, favoritism, somebody want to hurt somebody. Listen, nobody hurts somebody, nobody hates us. They have a different opinion of us. And I'm happy with that. No one here should be 100% correct all the time. Somewhere else in the world we call not a democracy, a dictatorship. Here you have the opportunity to have the chair of this fine council go meet with the mayor and discuss things out. Come to some type of a compromise. What's on the floor now, and it's been alluded to, similar to a zoning hearing, where between first and second reading, there are discussions on whether it changes the facts of the original hearing. There's a change being made, and some of these are very minor and can go between first, and you see the attorneys tell you, yes, we can make that change, and it could go. However, doing this, in my opinion, sole opinion, going from this, from first to second reading, without going back to first reading, could be a detriment to what you're trying to do. If this is a challenge and it loses, what happens then? Always think not of today and not of tomorrow, but what happened yesterday, tomorrow, what happened yesterday, today, tomorrow, and in the future is what we ought to look at. Not just for getting this off the table and say, hey, nobody won, nobody lost. We're happy. It's taking a risk that I will not take. Because if this is challenged, then this is another tug of war. And I don't mean physical tug of war. I want this, if we're really, really thinking about the future of this document that we have and the strong mayor form of government in the city. And I believe in that. I believe in a strong mayor of this city, and I'll tell you why. It pinpoints responsibility. And he or she, whoever sits in that office, is the one that's got to make the choice of what type of person and mayor they're going to be written in the history of this city. So that's how I feel. And I feel we have the opportunities, A, to approve or disapprove department heads at time of an election that's coming up in a few months, less than 2 years. The urgency is here, but is it going to tear a chapter out of the 4 years that this government serves together? I don't believe it will, but it could. So to take a risk of that size over one vote, and sometimes one vote makes a difference, a big difference. And it's not one vote, it's one vote that changes the change of the future of things to come for many years to come. And therefore, I'm not willing to take that chance right now, knowing what I think can happen. I like to see this put off to a charter change, and let's see what happens. Let the public vote on something that is so delicate that will put the record straight for many, many, many years to come. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
And
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Chairman, oh, if I may, I
You
just wanted
recognize.
to announce that I'm leaving.
Okay.
I appreciate it.
Okay, sir. Thank you for being on.
Thank you, sir. Pardon me.
Let me say this, gentlemen. When I first became a part of this council, you always heard of Charlie Miranda. You hear me at times call him the legend. Someone who's been around this council a long, long time, have seen it all. And I can remember 2 points when I first got on this council. We had a situation with water, and I voted one way, and Mr. Miranda voted one way, and everybody had their votes. He's right, everybody has their votes. I said, Mr. Miranda, he said, Orlando, stop for you saying that. Orlando, wait. I don't care how anybody votes. That's your vote. I respect whatever vote you made or any other councilman made. That's your vote. And I've respected it ever since I've been on this council to never get mad how somebody voted because you don't know their reason why they voted. So I thank you for that, sir. Number two, when you talk about compromise, here the legend came again when we were dealing with me stopping the budget in reference to the fire rescue in East Tampa. I think you guys recalled that. And we're back and forth. And the legend stepped in again and asked for a recess. And went in the back and met with Mr. Bennett. And told Mr. Bennett, let's come away with a compromise. Let's make it happen. It happened, gentlemen. It happened. I didn't want to get into any charter issues. I really didn't, but some colleagues have chimed in on that. Again, the legend spoke about the people. It's the people's police department. It's the people's water department. It's not ours. Many times you've heard me say that when we are delegating on situations, I said our charter is a little bit outdated. Even though we had a charter review commission and we went over some things, we didn't go through everything in that charter, and sometimes we were kind of upset because we were stonewalled on trying to do some stuff. And I think a lot of council members who were here would get frustrated because of what people say a strong form of mayoral government, which that is nowhere in our charter. It says anything about a strong form of mayoral government. It says 2 branches of government. I don't recall ever seeing strong mayor. I guess it's something, people come up with words and, it's been that way. That's the way we've always done it. And I'm not advocating taking away a strong form of mayoral government, but what I would say, when you look at how we legislate and how the administration does policy, I've said this many times, it becomes contradictory sometimes. It becomes interpretation. That's why for the last months before we even got to this issue in reference to police issue, reform, whatever, I've always said we have to take another look at the charter as it relates to interpretation of 2 branches of government. Now that has to happen. And it's going to happen. It won't be about these issues here, but that's going to happen with Ms. Grimes as the chairman. That's going to happen with Ms. Grimes and Mr. Shelby administration down the road of interpretations of certain things in the charter. That has to be cleared up. So I want to make that clear, Mr. Shelby. I've told you many times that has to be done, and that's got to get done. That's down the road. When you talk about department heads, Mr. Legend is right again. This body, before any department head becomes ownership of the mayor's office, we have to empower them. Many times, I tell people the police chief and the mayor are the 2 most important positions of this city. Everybody relies on the police chief, the police department, for service, safety, and for rescue time. I won't leave them out because they do it all. They don't do just one job. They're the water department, whatever they need to be at that particular time. The policeman is that person at that particular time because people are in distress or in need and they want answers at that particular time. And the policeman has to find a way to get it. Been there, I understand that. And I always wondered, it's been a thing to where, again, that's the way we've always done it. When you talk about appointments that are coming from the administration, I've never seen the councils ever question it. We just a rubber stamp and it goes on. There's never any confirmation of meeting with those department heads before they're coming before this body to see if this body likes that person. We just say, well, we'll go with whatever the administration says. Mr. Miranda Legend brings up a lot of different points, gentlemen. And those issues have to be dealt with down the road. But today, we've got to kind of come up with something to get this going. And then down the road, like Mr. Miranda said, I mean, it's going to come to that point. And it has. Time changes. He's seen it all. So I want to kind of bring it to the land. I want to keep it to at least under an hour and a half to try to see where everybody was headed so the administration can kind of see where this council's headed. For me, I'm willing to try to make a compromise now and then try to deal with these issues down the road, like he said in 2022, and you can put a lot of this to bed. Be it interpretation of anything in that charter, being department heads, being this, anything that needs to be, it can be kicked down, and we serve at the pleasure of the voters. He's right. There are 8 elected officials in the city, and we serve at the pleasure of the people. It's their house. This is all of their house. This is our house, but the city is their house. And I think they deserve the right to make decisions on their house. We've had our first round. I've kind of taken some notes on where I see that Thursday could go. When I do the numbers, I see one on a 5-5, and then Mr. Miranda made his statements on how he feels, and he doesn't feel it needs to be he doesn't believe the legal aspect of it. He believes that it could be a challenge on a bunch of aspects. And I think he could be right. I think there could be some legal. I know the city attorney said that, but people sue every day. Do we want to spend this kind of money? I got housing issues, gentlemen. I want to wrap it up. I want to try to keep it an hour and a half. I'm going to take any final comments. That way I kind of got in my mind, and the administration will have their mind. I'll let John Bennett, if he wants to say anything in the last portion, say. Mr. Maniscalco.
Thank you very much, and I appreciate everybody's comments. You know, the 5-5-1 split, you know, at the end of the day, like you said, you know, I have other things. I have housing issues to worry about. We have bigger issues in this city to worry about. I don't want to go down the road of a lawsuit, you know, more strife and division and fighting, especially going into the budget season, which is right around the corner. I mean, we have a lot of stuff coming up. You know, the 5-5-1, is it fair? It brings a balance, something that you mentioned and Councilman Miranda mentioned, you know, regarding department heads. You know, the mayor appoints the chief, but that chief needs the approval of city council. So there is a checks and balance, and it's not, you know, the police department runs the show. Again, you know, it goes to, comes to us, comes to the mayor, different signatures are required and approvals, there's a checks and balance. You know, the 5-5-1, I get it, you know, that one being the NAACP member, that one being that it needs to be approved by city council. So really we had that majority, 6-5. At the end of the day, I don't know what the big deal is. You know, why not a 7-4? Why not a this? But, you know, we're dealing with different personalities and different fears and whatnot. Again, you know, what does the board think about it, the CRB board? How do they feel? What do they want? What tools do they need in the toolbox? Do they feel like they're doing a good enough job? What was proposed to us, I mean, there are significant changes. You know, if we call it the May ordinance or whatever. Basically, the only thing that we're at, you know, at a stalemate is the appointments. Everything else, I think we essentially agree upon. Should we revisit it in the future if things are not working? We can do that. You know, can we put things on the ballot, as Councilman Miranda mentioned? We can do that and let the people vote. But to bring this to bed, I mean, we're repealing and replacing what was put in 2015. So there are changes. There's other modifications which we've all talked about and what makes this ordinance different and better. So it basically comes down to the appointments. Again, I'm not looking to fight. I'm not looking to flex any muscle. I don't have much, but I'm not looking to, you know, do a power play here. I'm just looking to put this to bed and move forward. Again, I've been listening to this for 6 years. You know, we had something, maybe it's not good. We're replacing it, repealing the previous with something better. And again, in the future, another council can decide differently. Another council can add more to it. The CRB board members could say they have concerns that they want to address, and they can change it in the future. We let a future mayor, a future council decide, or take it to the ballot, you know, on other bigger issues. And that's it. Thank you.
Mr. Carlson, you recognize.
Thank you, sir. For the public watching, you know, we've spent a year trying to make sure there's safeguards for the public and the police. We want to be fair to everyone, and we've added a lot of that in here. What you've seen play out this morning and in the meeting before anybody's watched is that we're at the end of the negotiations on this round. It's always possible that we can add something else in the future, as my colleagues have said, but in this round, we've gone back and forth, back and forth, back and forth. This is as far as we can get in this round. The most important thing is that if we change the voting, we have to use the May version, and we need a new executive order that supersedes so the ordinance and the executive order supersede. Mr. Bennett, do we have a copy of the executive order? And would there be a new executive order, or how?
I know that the May version, the red light version is available. I would phone a friend at legal, make sure that the executive order is either ready or could be prepared for Thursday.
I mean, just so we could see the executive order, and maybe,
Understood.
I don't know how the vote's going to go down, but there's one that reaffirms 7-4 and one that reaffirms 5-1-5.
Right. Ms. Grimes, you want to address that?
Yes, Gina Grimes. The executive order a draft was provided in November, got some comments, I revised it, provided it in February. I don't believe it was provided for the May meeting, but it was previously provided, Mr. Carlson, and I'm happy to email you a copy.
If you wouldn't mind emailing us, and then please also post it to SIRE so the public can see it, and then people can see that whatever language is in both of them that supersedes the old part of it. But thank you all for working on this. One other last point, and just to clarify the press conference from a couple weeks ago, I don't think we have, Ms. Grimes or clerk can correct me, but I don't think we have subpoena power coming up on any agenda. Is that correct? We only have, we put a February workshop to talk about independent counsel, but not subpoena power.
Mr. Chairman.
You recognize, Mr. Shelby.
Yes, Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. I have the calendar in front of me, and certainly the clerk can correct me if I'm wrong, but on February 24th, your calendar reads as follows, and both of them at 9 a.m. beside the presentation of the commendation to the police officer of the month, a continued workshop, Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney and Legal Department, to present a draft ordinance regarding the Citizen Review Board discretion to hire or retain independent counsel that would be presented as a charter question for citizens, and the companion that follows workshop, council to discuss any proposed charter amendment changes to the city charter. Those are the two separate items that council had added.
Yeah, so just to clarify, so we don't have another press conference, the subpoena power is not, the public wants it, members of the public want it, but we were told by the city attorney that we can't just add it without a charter amendment. We can, anytime before the next election, add it as a charter amendment, but for right now, the administration doesn't want us to put it on the agenda, and so we haven't put it on the agenda yet. The independent counsel is on the agenda. The only thing that I would ask is if at some point somebody makes a motion to take that off the agenda, I think we ought to leave the placeholder discussion there for any other charter discussions. Remember, the purpose of that was so that we wouldn't have multiple meetings to talk about charter amendments. We would only have one, and if that's not the right date, we could move it. But just if we could separate those two issues. But I appreciate Mr. Bennett, Chief Bennett, and Chair Goods for getting us to this point. Thank you.
Mr. Carlson, I probably would entertain a motion on Thursday to strike the one, but the latter has to be done as it pertains to the whole charter in itself. So Mr. Shelby, again, he's been instructed to get Ms. Grimes in reference to a workshop in reference to the whole charter, because there are some interpretations we must clear up. Mr. Citro, you're recognized.
Mr. Chair, I've always said, I know you have your saying, don't tell me what you can't do, tell me what you can do.
That's correct.
And you've heard my saying, and my saying is dialogue will solve everything. Thank you for opening this dialogue. Thank the mayor for opening this dialogue. Again, what I would like to see is rip and replace, go back to the May ordinance, and do a 6-5-1 of appointees to the CRB, 6 from city council, 4 from the mayor, and that the community activists, again, whether it be NAACP or any other activists, be appointed by the council as a whole. Gentlemen, I feel that this is going to be our best way of going about it. Let the board come back to us once a year and let us know what they want, what they like, what they don't like. Let's let this be organic. Let's let the board grow on its own. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Dingfellow, you're recognized.
Joe, just for clarification, you started by saying 651 and then you said 6-4.
I know that. Thank you very much,
Which
John.
one?
6-4-1. That makes 11. I misspoke my first time around.
I just wanted to make sure the record was clear. I don't know that I really have anything to add beyond what I said before, Mr. Chairman. I will say, and I've spoken with Ms. Grimes about this, I know she has some issues with the term independent counsel versus outside counsel. And maybe she's right on that. So if and when we ever got to that discussion in February, perhaps the better term might be outside counsel. It's kind of splitting hairs. But again, as I stated earlier, and as I mentioned to Mr. Bennett a couple of weeks ago, I think that is that, and with all due respect, Mr. Carlson, the elephant in the room seems to be subpoena power, so you might as well address it. I think if those are big issues to the administration and PBA and what have you, then those are things that we could, potentially not deal with during this 4-year term. I'm okay with that. I do think the ordinance has come a long way, but I think the most important thing to come out of all of this is who are we and what are we doing here? Because if we are not the legislative body, regardless of you want to call this a strong mayor form of government, a weak form of government, what have you, if we are not the legislative body to make the final legislative decisions on behalf of the citizens who are in touch with us everywhere, in the grocery store, in the drugstore, on the street, on the phone, and by email, etc. Okay, we are the day-to-day connection with this community. And therefore, it's appropriate for us to be the legislative body, and we should be making these decisions, and once we've made them, we should stick with them unless there's some compelling reason not to. So I'm comfortable with where we are in terms of the decision we made back in May, 5-2, and I think that we should move forward with that. But with that said, I think that as a matter of compromise, the other two issues about outside counsel and subpoena power, I think could be dealt with another day, another year.
Mr. Randa, and then I'll go to Mr. Shelby for his comments.
No, I've said enough and I've heard enough. Thank you.
Legend has spoken. Mr. Shelby.
Mr. Chairman, the only thing I would add, Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney, thank you for your discussion. And again, Mr. Chairman, thank you for your leadership and including me in the meeting. I appreciate it very much to see the two branches of government working collaboratively together and working cordially together. And I appreciate your opportunity today in the public forum to be able to have this discussion amongst yourselves so the public is clear on the decisions that you're going to be making on Thursday. If there is the ability for you to come to a consensus, council, it may be to your advantage to be able to come to a consensus today. You have the Chief of Staff present in the room. If there is a question as to the administration's position, you have the opportunity to get clear on it at the time. And importantly, by the end of this meeting, if it's the chair's intention to do so, you will, even though you cannot take official action, you can telegraph what the consensus of this board is of what the official action will be on Thursday. So there are no surprises to anybody, and the public certainly will have the opportunity to give input at a public hearing, as they would be, before you take final action. So please take advantage, if council is capable, forgive me to use the word capable, if council is willing to be able to formulate a consensus to convey to Mr. Bennett and have Mr. Bennett's response, and perhaps you can get some sort of assurance from him of what the administration's position is, or would be, perhaps, on that consensus.
I was going to do that, Mr. Shelby. He's the number 2 man in the city. He has the mayor's ear. He's heard from this council today. I'm sure he'll be able to take back some of what he's heard. We're willing to compromise. I'm hoping the administration is willing to do so. It's no win-win her or us. It's just making the city go in the right path. Mr. Bennett, you're recognized.
Again, John Bennett, Chief of Staff. Again, thank you, Chairman, for pulling this special call meeting together. Thanks, Mr. Shelby, for working with the administration as well, offline especially. And thanks to our staff for the level of engagement to date. I'll be very prescriptive from what I understand from the collective of the administration. I don't need to rehash the due diligence that we felt. We worked collaboratively together with all facets of the community to bring us where we are today. I will say, though, that when you serve a city of this size and this magnitude, I heard things about, the history of the police department. There's been four police administrations up to this point since we changed the mission statement and reduced crime by 80% in this city, and continue to sustain that. I think the value here is, in my opinion, the experience of the mayor when she said, one, it's time to progress the ordinance, and was willing to rip and replace it and bring in a new ordinance signed by the mayor after the approval and adoption from council, and complement that with the appropriate executive order to allow not only progress today, but progress in the future. This is the beginning of additional progress. If we're not continuing to improve, we're sitting still, and if we're sitting still, we're going backwards. So I think that's the element of progress. I think the element of unbiased and balanced comes down to the makeup of the board. The mayor clearly gave up a 7-4 for the recommendation today, and I'm being very prescriptive here, of a 5-5-1. 5 recommendations from council, 5 from the mayor, and 1 recommended and confirmed by council or the administration, and confirmed by council or the administration. And I think there's value in that for the following reason, especially in law enforcement. Crime, yes, the law enforcement are going to continue to do their job, and they're going to enforce the law. But I think the difference comes down to leadership. We all know that whatever team you're managing or coaching, it comes down to leadership is the difference maker in a community. And this department has been led by great leadership in elected positions, partners in the community, the public, and of course the very officers that are doing the work on the front line, and the support staff that supports them every day. I'm very confident that if council and of course the administration can find that balance of making sure that we do a rip and replace, everybody signing on signing day, and a 5-5-1 by next Thursday. And we've already gotten at least a level of confidence from the city attorney's office, confirmed by Mr. Shelby, that these minor adjustments can be made as of Thursday. I think we can move the city forward, and there's always room for improvement. And I think this appeases the CRB as a board, the police department, the union, the other stakeholders that have been involved in all the iterations that led us to the May version, which we are today. And I think that, to Councilman Maniscalco's point, that leads us into the next chapter of working on the budget.
You recognize, sir.
Mr. Chief Bennett, just one quick thing. The members of the public who are involved in this and have been for 6 years, this final issue. I should say to the public, there are lots of things that are in this that are different than the original version. If you go back
Correct.
6 years, it's very different.
Correct.
We've been talking about from one version to another, but there's significant progress in this May version. We're talking about some additional issues that the committee wants, but one of the things is that the way they see it is that they want city council to have majority appointees on this. It would help if we're going to go to 515. It would help with the community if we could say that the city council appoints but the mayor approves. I know you said both, and I don't know how it's written, but if it's possible to say the city council appoints and the mayor approves, that would just help us in talking to those members of the community.
Understood, and I think the administration will be receptive to that.
His words from this administration point of view. Mr. Citro, you come to
One last just clarification for myself. The community activist group, whether it be NAACP or whomever that would be, Chief Bennett, who would be the appointing there? City council or mayor?
Well, based on Councilman Carlson's recommendation is that, what I heard was that council could make the nomination and the mayor confirm the nomination.
Thank you very much, Chief. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Well, Mr. Moran already said he wouldn't, anything otherwise, he wouldn't support on Thursday, period, because he figured it'd be a legal matter. So if we look at going with the May 551, and Mr. Maniscalco was kind of leaning that he would be possible to maybe compromise. And Mr. Citro seems that way. Mr. Dingfelder seems to be still 7-4. So I just want to make it clear, are we getting close, gentlemen? We can deal with a compromise with the administration and those other items kicked down to.
I want to see. I want to read. I appreciate Chief Bennett working with us, and we all need to go back and talk to our constituents about it. But I think that in the version that we just talked about, it's better than having nothing and having start of a legal war, and we could go back and negotiate this another time. We've got so many good things that we've negotiated, and I would ask everybody, please go back to the version from 6 years ago and look at where we are today. It's significantly different, and we need to approve a version so that we can come back and edit it. But if we end up in a big fight, it's not going to be approved for months or years in a legal battle. But I think if we're going to be particular or prescriptive about Thursday, we also need to clarify one final point. Originally, the one was that the mayor's office had proposed that the one would be the NAACP, and that the NAACP would propose somebody, and then city council or the mayor would approve them. Are you changing that definition? I think legal needs some definition of what would be in this so that they can present the language to us for Thursday.
Mr. Chairman, Martin Shelby, City Council Attorney. Before Ms. Grimes would address that, I do have the ordinance that was passed on first reading in front of me, and I'm sure the City Attorney does too.
Mr. Shelby, just before you get to that point, because
Yes.
that's been brought up by the CRB, Mr. Citro's brought that up too. I think the word organization or civic organization versus a specific name of an organization. And again, that was brought up by the CRB. And again, some council members have brought that up too. So I just want us to shed light on that as well. Mr. Citro, before you get to Mr. Citro, you recognize.
No, I just wanted to thank you on that. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Mr. Shelby, you recognize.
Well, I believe council and Councilmember Carlson raises a very good point. Obviously, between now and Thursday, council will need to see that language, and so will the public to the degree that they can by the time of the public hearing if council chooses to go forward with the second reading. As it stands now, that would need to be clarified. I don't recall of how it was drafted in the February ordinance. I don't have that one in front of me. So maybe Ms. Grimes can address that. But you raise a very good point as to getting a consensus and getting clear as to what will be prepared as a result of today's consensus, the legal department understanding what it has to bring forth to City Council in advance of Thursday's meeting, so you could be able to go to second reading if you want to do that. And let me just address that one more time, just very briefly, and add a little bit more. And Ms. Grimes certainly can add to this. If there is a problem with adopting that minor amendment to Exhibit A, replacing it, substituting it, and adopting it on second reading, if there is a problem with that ordinance, it is of a technical nature. It is that somebody's going to challenge it on the basis of the fact that it didn't comply with Florida statutes. And the effect of it was they would have to bring a lawsuit. And ultimately, the remedy is to ultimately go back to what is existing. And the way council can cure that is to go through the process of going through another first reading and second reading. That is, on a cost-benefit basis, to anybody who'd want to challenge that ordinance, there's nothing really to be gained except to be a spoiler. And I don't believe the risk is as tremendous as warranting, just even on a fast track, council, because of your council's recess for the summer, it would not even be able to come back, as I understand it, for second reading. If you had to go back to first reading this Thursday, it wouldn't be able to come back for another month into July. So it depends on how council wants to weigh the costs and benefits of how it wants to move forward. And ultimately, you have the issue that Councilman Miranda raised, that ultimately, that if you want to put this before the voters, then you would be operating continuously under the existing ordinance, the 2015 ordinance, until it's put before the voters. And then depending on what the voters do, and depending on what the question you put before the voters, you won't know what that decision is. So I just wanted to put that in that context. Thank you.
Mr. Shelby,
Yes.
I'm gonna let Mr. Dingfellow chime in, then I'm gonna say something with reference to what you just said, sir. Mr. Dingfellow, you recognize?
So, Mr. Chairman and Mr. Citro, are you suggesting that instead of using the words NAACP, that regardless of which ordinance we go with, or which head count we go with, that we substitute instead of the words NAACP something like a local civil rights organization? Is that what you're proposing? Because I do think that Ms. Grimes and Mr. Shelby need some direction from this body. Again, I would say that would be a minor technical change that, regardless of which way we go, 7455, whatever, could be accomplished in second reading this coming Thursday.
Yes, thank you, Councilman Dingfellow. Thank you, Mr. Chair. That's what I am proposing. Organization is the key word there. That way that they are, they are recognized as a community activist group. Organization, whether it be NAACP, whether it be some other community activist group. So, yes.
And that way it gives everybody a chance to serve. But Mr. Shelby, I as a chairman, I just want to make sure we do things above board and legal.
Yes, sir.
I don't want to where we have to be challenged on anything. If we're going to do something, we're going to do it and do it the right way. I don't care if it comes back in July. That's not an issue for me. The issue is to make sure it's done right. And we've heard from the legend, and he's been here longer than anybody, and he feels it be a problem. So whether technical or not, and I know we've done some stuff, probably we shouldn't have done, but we've done it.
No.
Just want to make sure we do it right.
Well, Ms. Grimes' office has done the legal research, the attorneys upstairs, and have taken a look at it, and they can go more into depth. But the answer is, if you want to know what the safest course of action is, and council comes to a consensus, you could go back to first reading on Thursday, but then what you'd have is you'd have another public hearing and a second reading in July. If that puts council at ease, then the delay is necessary. The question is, and I'm just responding to concerns from people who want to, and I don't know whether the administration has a particular position on this, but to be able to actually come together and put this matter to rest for the benefit of the citizens of Tampa with a degree of finality, And when I say finality, the process is just beginning because the whole process implementation is a
I wanna go
process
to
in and of
Miranda first,
itself.
And then I'll come to you, Mr. Carlson.
Yes.
Mr. Miranda,
We need to do second reading, be done with this.
what's your opinion, sir?
Well, it's not the opinion. Is 30 days going to be a deal breaker as far as the chances of something not being applicable to someone, and you have a challenge and you have all this and you get back again and you're back? I'm not looking forward to something that prolongs kicking the can down the road, as I said, out in the streets, and to go forever and not do anything. No. But if the issue is 30 days that important relative to what the possibility could be that it's turned down somewhere down the road? That's what we're looking at, 30 days. Is it going to be a deal breaker on 30 days versus that? I don't know. But I can tell you one thing, I'd rather have something that is more codified so that if it is taken up, it was done without any blemish that we know of. We already know what the chances are here. Anytime you go to court, it ain't 70-80 or 90-10, it's 50-50 going in. You ready to take the chance of 50-50, or you ready to take the 30 days in lieu of a 99-1? That's what I'm saying.
Mr. Carlson, I saw your hand there. I'll go Mr. Dingfelder.
Thank you, sir. Just two quick questions. Chief Bennett, my understanding in speaking with staff and then watching the press conference with the police chief and the mayor is that their preference is to resolve this as soon as possible. Is that still the direction, or does the administration care whether we, does the administration have a preference as to whether we do second reading on Thursday versus delaying it till July?
No, the preference, and hence the research, is to calculate the legal risk factors, which I think have been done, and the recommendation is to try and move forward on Thursday, again, with the 551. And I wanted to point out, I mentioned it to Mr. Shelby, and he can interpret my question if he wants to, in addition to my comments, but the reason I have a level of confidence, I'm not a lawyer, but the reason I have a level of confidence not only in the research of what the legal department has done in sharing that with Mr. Shelby is that the 551 recommendation has already been in front of the public in a prior version. It's not a completely new methodology, if you will, for configuring the board. That was presented in this continuum, and so I could, if we were going to 20 and 2 or some other configuration and it was radically different, I think it brings an element of consistency. We're just toggling back to a previous version with a recommendation on that one individual.
Could I also just ask City Attorney Ms. Grimes, could you tell us, without opening a huge legal discussion, but could you just tell us if it seems to me that if there was a legal challenge, that we could just schedule this for first and second reading sometime in the future and pass the exact same language, and that wouldn't that supersede it and then allow us to have a summary judgment or something like that?
If there was a challenge to the ordinance based on the process, if we did not prevail, the ordinance would be void, which would then revert us back to where we are now, with the mayor having 7 appointments and council having 4, and a board with very limited powers.
So somebody
at that point, then you could re-adopt what we're proposing right now. It's on the table right now in the normal course of the process.
If somebody filed a lawsuit during that legal process, could we not hold first and second reading to adopt exactly the same thing to replace what?
Oh, I'm saying yes.
Okay.
Yes.
All right.
That as well.
Yeah, I would rather have us vote this as second reading on Thursday. Thank you.
Mr. Dingfelder, then I'll get Mr. Shelby. Mr. Dingfelder.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Carlson. That's pretty much what I was going to say. The thing I've been agonizing over the last 2 weeks, and I've put a call into Ms. Zellman, to Mr. Shelby, to anybody who will listen. I think I've mentioned it to Mr. Bennett as well, is whatever we do, let's just be done with this Thursday, okay? I mean, if I can agree with anything that Ms. Grimes came up and said to us a few weeks ago, is that this thing is dragged on long enough, all right? And yes, anybody can sue us about anything. It doesn't cost very much to walk into the circuit court and sue us. But the basis for it would be silly. It'd be frivolous, okay? The difference between first and second reading, and like you said, Bill, if they sue us, the minute somebody sues us, all we have to do is go back through the process again and pass it. We don't even have to wait for a judge to decide, okay? And then the lawsuit becomes moot. So let's just be done with this Thursday, no matter what.
Oh, that's why we had discussion. Mr. Shelby, you recognized.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chairman. And just to add to council's level of comfort, if this would help, is the very fact that you are having this meeting today televised before the public with full notice before Thursday, I think also adds to the weight of the fact that this council is transparent about what it attempts to accomplish, and the fact that the public is on notice and will have an opportunity to speak before you take final action.
All right, well, I think we've brought this to a landing. I think we've kind of have heard from everybody to see where we are looking at Thursday and to bring this to bed. Mr. Bennett, I would say one thing if you come to the podium, sir. You being the spokesperson for the administration, this council is willing to work with the administration, but we also just want to make sure we have transparency on these issues. And that's what you hear time and time again from the council, transparency and getting the information to us on time so we can be able to vet the information. However it goes on Thursday, which I think, I think it will come out to where everybody will be able to walk away with our heads high. I want to make sure to everybody, to the public, to the administration, to those civic groups, to this body, there's no winner in this. The only winner in this whole thing will be the city of Tampa. So there's no win for the mayor. There's no win for this council. I want to make sure that's clear. It's a win for all of us. And if it's a done deal on Thursday, we'll have a press conference with everybody, or whenever that can be, that the people know that we came together to make this happen for everybody, the citizens. And whatever goes down the road is down the road for whatever other administration, whatever council, whatever workshops, that's down the road. But on Thursday, we bring it to the close. It will be everybody coming together. No win for the administration, no win for this council, but the win for the citizens of Tampa, sir.
I appreciate those comments, Chairman, and I think that's exactly what the mayor expressed in our meeting the other day. And again, I go back to Mr. Shelby's vision of all of us being around the table executing this shortly after Thursday. I just need to leave the lectern being crystal clear that,
John Bennett, Chief of Staff, City of Tampa. I just want to leave the lectern crystal clear that it's my understanding, based on the dialogue this morning, and I agree with Mr. Shelby on everything about the transparency part, is that the administration will bring back a 551 option on Thursday for council to consider.
And could we be even more specific as to the 551, that is the appointment as to, and the city attorney's heard this, but as that to be classified as a civil rights organization, is that the consensus of council?
Activist any organization.
Well, it depends what your definition, and that's
What do you want,
something.
John?
No. What does that mean?
What, right.
Community activist.
Is that the PBA? I don't know. That's an organization.
That's not a community activist
No, I know,
organization.
but that's what I'm saying. I just heard any organization.
Well, it almost
You have a
depends,
word
it
for
almost
Mr.
begs the
Mr.
question
Defa?
on how you define, I mean,
I thought the intent was a civil rights organization.
a civil rights organization.
That's okay.
But I don't know. It came
Well,
from
could
my
we
website.
inquire of the city attorney whether that, in her opinion and her staff's opinion, is that something that is doable if that's the consensus?
Ms. Grimes?
Yes, we can refer to it as a civil rights organization or a social justice organization, whichever way you'd like. And the other, this is just a procedural question. I'm not clear whether you want me to prepare this change before Thursday or to have it available to you on Thursday. I'm more than willing to work on it today and try to get it into SIRE later on today or tonight.
I would prefer before Thursday.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman.
And so it would be, I would take the existing draft, the May draft, and I would modify section 18-8D, provide that council has 5 appointments, the mayor has 5 appointments, and then there would be 1 appointment by city council of a member of a civil rights or social justice organization, and that council appointment would be subject to confirmation by the mayor.
Mr. Shelby, I just saw you.
Well, the question is, does council want to be clear? Does it want to refer to it as both, or just choose it to be a civil rights organization, or use the term social justice as it's defined?
I think
They're
Ms.
both the
Civil
same,
rights
aren't
as it's
I think Ms.
defined.
Grimes had a good solution there, civil rights or
Civil,
social justice.
Is that the consensus of council? If that's the consensus of council, then that's
Mr.
clear.
Chairman, just one other thing.
You're recognized, sir.
Thank you. Ms. Grimes, I appreciate this consensus-building exercise that we're in. What I would ask respectfully is that you also take the 741 draft that's also pending and make that same modification, civil rights or social justice to that draft. So then that way on Thursday, we have two choices. We can go 551 or we can go 741, but we have a perfect draft to move forward with.
Okay, no problem.
If that's
I've
okay
been
with
told by-
council? Everybody hear what
by
I'm
my-
saying?
I mean, if you want, I mean, she can have
Well-
two drafts. I mean,
No, but she doesn't have two drafts, because right now she has an old draft of the 741 that didn't include the NAACP update.
but she's gonna change it. She's gonna change it.
Now she's gonna change it pursuant to what I just said.
Thank you, sir.
Okay.
Mr. Chairman, if I could just follow up, and if I could just follow up.
One
just
at
for
one
the-
at a time. One at a time.
But
Sorry.
she's also
Let-
gonna include the draft that's 551 with the NAACP change. So she's gonna bring two documents to us that we can vote on Thursday.
Mr. Chairman,
Mr. Shelby, you're recognized.
the ordinance that's with the clerk today, the ordinance that's been advertised for second reading, is the ordinance that has the Exhibit A as it stands today, which is what you're suggesting being changed. So in effect, you're asking for two things to come back in addition to the ordinance that's on the agenda.
Yeah.
Okay, I just want to be clear that
All
there
right,
would
so
have
you're
to
saying
be,
there might be three things?
well, you just raised a third, because,
Yes.
okay, I just wanted to be clear, because that ordinance is, as it is, on the agenda for second reading.
Okay.
Ms. Sidgwick, you have your hand up, sir?
Yes, sir, please and thank you.
You're-
Miss Grimes, there is a woman to your left. Would you please introduce her?
It's Ursula, isn't it?
Ursula. It's
Yes.
Ursula Richardson.
I would like the public to know
She's
that
been
this,
help-
that this woman has helped me out immensely. If I had questions about this ordinance, there was times that she informed me. So I'd like to also thank you, Miss Ursula, for your help. Thank you.
That's Ursula Richardson. I think she's chief litigator, correct, Ms. Grimes? And she's been the spearhead on
correct.
getting the ordinance together and crafting it, correct?
Joe knew who she was. He was just recognizing her.
And I also
I was
want
going
to,
through a chain of
mention,
command.
he has been the one person that has consistently appeared in front of the CRB during this whole process.
Yes, ma'am.
And to ensure they're up to speed on the status of the ordinance. So she has done a really nice job of making sure that they are at least aware of what was taking place.
Okay.
Thank you, Miss Grimes. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Ms. Carlson?
Just to echo that, I want to thank her for not only all the things that were just said, but also in the beginning of this process, she did extensive research to look into other CRBs in Florida and throughout the country. So thank you so much for all that diligence on this.
Mr. Shelby, I see you going back and forth, so you're recognized.
Thank you, sir. A consensus, please, with regard to the February workshop on the discussion of the discretion of the board to hire or retain independent counsel. That would be presented as a charter question. There was some discussion that council would be willing, if that was the administration's request, to have that taken off the February agenda.
Why are we talking about that today?
Because if the administration, that came up at the meeting
Okay,
with the
well,
mayor.
We've already conceded, we've already said that that's down the road, and we're gonna deal with the issue of the vote, the number.
yeah, let's get through Thursday first.
Well, that's the question. The question is what I don't, if this is going to come up on Thursday, I think you have the ability to discuss it with the administration. If council doesn't wish to discuss it, it's fine with the administration. I'm willing to move
I don't want to throw a
on.
monkey in the wrench right now, Mr. Shelby. I just
That's
really,
fine.
let's
I'm
get to
fine.
the vote, let's get to the vote right now in reference
I'm
to
fine.
the number, and that we deal with later on. So I don't want to mix the two, because then we go to a whirlwind. Ms. Grimes?
Just one procedural question. So I will prepare two new ordinances consistent with the direction you gave me, and I will submit them into Sire. And if you could please ask the clerk to accept them into Sire since it's past the deadline date. I will get those to you all so you can review them, as well as the public having access to those documents for review.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, you'll ask the clerk to accept them and decide.
Mr. Moretta, before I get there, Mr. Moretta, make your point, sir.
No, I'm not opposed at all with Mr. Carlson to put it on Sire and so forth and so on, but if there's one little comma that's out of place, they might have the wrong information. Why don't we just get the thing, look at it, and put it on whoever, let Mr. Shelby agree with the item, and then put it on Sire. For Ms. Grimes to put her on that, not on the spot, but she's capable of doing a fine job. And if she makes one error, then we're all gonna look like, what are y'all doing now? Like playing tricks? We're not playing tricks, but I wanna make sure 110,000% that what goes on to the public is 110% what we discussed. That's all.
Mr. Shelby?
From my perspective, Mr. Miranda, I appreciate what you're saying, but I want you to know that the competence and excellence in your city's legal department, for
That's not what
me,
he
I
said.
don't want to slow down the process by it having to come through me if time is of the essence.
That's not what he's saying. We don't care about telling you. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, and I concur with him, that you're our city attorney. She's going to write it, send it to you for review.
Yes.
And you send it back to her saying, oh, this is a go.
Yes.
And that way you can tell all the council members, that's your job, each one of your clients, Mr. Chairman, I've met with everybody, and it's going to Ms. Grimes to go to Sire.
So are you saying that you want her to send it to me and then I meet with council members individually? No, I just want to, forgive me
I
for being
want you
confused.
to receive it from Ms. Grimes.
Yes.
Approve it. You've heard what the council have asked.
Yes.
Once you've approved it, because you're the council attorney, you can
Yes.
send it to Ms. Grimes, say, I approve, and she can do what she needs to do with it.
Thank you. With that understanding, I'm very happy to do that. Thank you, Mr. Miranda. Yes, I'm happy to do
And then
that.
the final component, Mr. Chairman, is that when it comes back from Gina and she sends it to the clerk, I think Ms. Grimes has asked you to ask the clerk to accept.
That's fine. That's fine. Deputy Clerk Celine, you got that?
Yeah,
Okay.
and Ms. Grimes, just a reminder, please also while you're doing it, upload the mayor's, the latest version of the mayor's executive order that supersedes the last one. Thank you.
Yes, sir.
Anyone else? Anyone else? All hearts and minds?
Move to receive and file.
Second.
Moved by Mr. Miranda, second by Mr. Central. All in favor?
Aye.
All right, stand adjourned.